There are indications that the All Progressive Congress presidential candidate, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, may unveil his running mate on Wednesday. According to reports, Tinubu will conclude consultations with party stakeholders, including governors, on Tuesday, and announce his running mate on Wednesday. It is also learned that the APC governors and other stakeholders had agreed that the Northeast should produce a vice presidential candidate of the party. There's a concern that Tinubu, who emerged the APC presidential candidate at the party's primary on Wednesday, might settle for a Muslim as his running mate. Meanwhile, the opposition People's Democratic Party will be unveiling its presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar's running mate for the 2023 elections on Tuesday. A lot to talk about.
Yes, it's really rather exciting. I'm sure we've all been to church weddings where the priest will say that marriage is not something to be undertaken lightly. It must be reverential. It mustn't be selfish. And that, for me, that whole spiel reminds me of finding a running mate. If you're a candidate, either for president or governor, it's extremely important. And certain factors have to be taken into consideration. And I think those factors might differ in different electoral cycles. But I think they're general basics that must be considered. Like maybe the voting bloc that the person brings. If you have a long list of possible alternatives, you can winnow it down based on what they bring, either through their machinery or through the region that they come from. You do need your running mate to bring their treasure trove of votes, hopefully. You need, sometimes, if you have like an older candidate, you might want a younger vice president candidate for a foil, a kind of a balance. You certainly need a geographical balance in Nigeria, the ethnic question, and the religious balance is also important. I know now it's been posited that it's possible that we might get a Muslim ticket, even in a time like this when this country has never been more divided, either along ethnic lines or religious lines. But I would think, we've discussed this last week, I would be very surprised if that was the case. For me, it would show a really obtuse insensitivity to the prevailing factors in this country right now. But we've seen that even in this recent run-up to these elections in 2023, who thought PDP would field a northern candidate? So obtuse insensitivity does happen. I think our political figures tend to jettison all those considerations for political expediency, and that's really unfortunate. Elsewhere, people have also considered gender. It was a quite common practice across the country to look at a female second half of the ticket. I'm not expecting that this time, unfortunately, but we'll soon find out. People have said with regards to Asiwaju Bola Tinubu that he will need a northern Christian if he can get one. And it's been reported that Boss Mustafa is not interested. Simon Lalong is another name that was, bandied about and was said, no, not him, because he was supporting Amechi. But for me, I find that so funny. That's neither here nor there at this point. They're all one big happy party, or so we're told. And really, politicians heal faster than Wolverine. Even if you were supporting somebody yesterday, it's about the party winning an election. So I don't think that should be too much of a minus if Governor Lalong is really being considered. I guess we'll find out, because our next deadline, come hell or high water, we must know all the political parties, the complete ticket by 17th of June.
Dr. Abati?
Okay, a number of issues. Let me try as much as possible to break them down. The office of the vice president is a creation of the Nigerian Constitution, Section 141. It says that should be a vice president for the federation. When the INEC chairman was outlining the conditions and guidelines for the next phase of the process, he pointed out that every political party, for the position of governor and president, must provide a vice president, who is a running mate, and for governors, a deputy governor. Otherwise, it will be an invalid ticket. So for presidents and deputy governors, it's a joint ticket that you bring to the table within the purview of Section 141. Now, the qualifications for being a vice president. Well, some of the things that have been said, you will need education. Education is already defined in Section 138 of the same Constitution, and also in Section 141 thereof, relating to a vice president, which means you only need secondary school or its equivalent. So anybody will probably pass that test, because in Nigeria, the qualification for high office is not a big deal. You only need to even be able to speak just English. But you also need to have political value. These are some of the things that will be considered. Can you bring the votes? All these presidential candidates, they are there because they want to win, not because they are running an NGO. They want to win power. So you need a deputy, a running mate that can strengthen the ticket. Also, you need a personality that is compatible. I keep saying that. Compatibility is very important. We saw that in the case of Obasanjo and Atiku. Atiku in the first term was very powerful. The president allowed him to function and all that. But he was, in the second term, he was benched, to use a Nigerian phrase. And also we've seen in the relationship between former Vice President Goodluck Jonathan, as he then was, as Vice President to Umaru Yar'Adua, that for the better part of the time, until fortune, changed the game, Vice President Goodluck Jonathan, as he then was reduced to the level of reading newspapers. Now, okay, so compatibility is very important. And I assume that although the various political parties have been talking about consultations with stakeholders, I think compatibility is something they need to worry about. Because even at the state level, we've seen governors and their deputies ending up at daggers drawn. The most recent example in that case will be the no love lost relationship between Makinde, governor of Oyo State, and his deputy, who has now crossed to another political party. But why is it important that there should be a running mate, a deputy? Well, the same constitution talks about in the event of resignation, death, incapacitation, or if the president goes on vacation, the vice president steps in. The vice president, in reality, is a member of the National Executive Council. He's the chair of the National Economic Council. A number of parastatals, including the Boundary Commission, are under him. In terms of perception, it provides a certain balance. And that's why issues about ethnicity and religion have become very important factors to give constituencies represented by the vice president a sense of belonging. But in reality, the position of the vice president of Nigeria is not even as powerful as that of the United States. Even in the United States, there are concerns about powers ascribed to the office of the vice president. Okay, the vice president in the U.S. system is also a member of Congress, and as if there is a tie, he or she has a deciding vote. Our own vice president does not have such powers. All the executive powers under the Nigerian Constitution, under Section 5, are concentrated in the office of, not even the office of the president, in the person of the president. In other words, the Nigerian president is a monarch. He alone can decide what he wants anybody to do. In fact, if he so wishes, he can delegate the functions of the vice president to ministers. And the vice president can be rendered dormant. But that's not the consideration now. I think the main residue that we have are the other balancing factors. And as we move forward, with INEC having given the deadline, 1 week since June 9th, when the primaries ended, and INEC saying it's not going to shift the goalpost. So all the presidential candidates that have emerged need to name their running mates. The only party that has done so as of this morning is APUGA, that has named a running mate. Now the other political parties. Take the PDP. Alhaji Atiku Abubakar has been said, okay, has only one option, to pick from the south. Who is he going to pick from the south? Names that have been mentioned include Wike, the governor of Rivers State, who came second in that presidential primaries of the PDP. Now, would Atiku Abubakar, would the governors, the National Working Committee members of PDP, who have met at least 3 times now, they met thrice, consulting with Atiku Abubakar, would they decide on Nyesom Wike? Can Atiku Abubakar work with Wike? Or will it be Ifeanyi Okowa, the governor of Delta State, whose name has also been mentioned? This would seem to be the two front runners. Or will it be an Igbo, a mainland Igbo person like Ifeanyi Ungwanye? So who will it be? So these are the choices available. The name of the president or the director general of the WTO has also been mentioned with regard to the PDP. And there was a story about former Vice President Atiku Abubakar going to Zurich to consult with the international community. Well, but Paul Ibe, who is a media man for the Atiku office, said, no, there is no such thing. There was no consultation with Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. But even if it is, if gender is a factor in it, which I probably doubt, I don't think Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala should abandon her international assignment to come and get involved again in the murky waters of Nigerian politics. That, in my view, will be counterproductive for her. She has a bigger job on an international stage instead of coming back to the village to come and get mad in the murky politics of Nigeria. Now, we go to the APC side. The APC standard bearer is Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And there have also been stories about ethnicity and religion. On his side, the matter is not as settled as it appears to be settled in terms of those two dominant factors of ethnicity and religion on the PDP side. Now, we're being told that if he were to choose Christians, he will probably choose Simon Lalong, from Plateau State. The advantage of Simon Lalong is that he was governor of the Progressive Governors Forum in the APC. But does he have electoral votes as governor of Plateau State, which is in the north central region? We have been told also by Honorable Nakande that Simon Lalong cannot fit the bill because he's an Amechi supporter, and I should not pretend that he's behind Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The name of Honorable Yakubu Dogara has also been mentioned. Yakubu Dogara comes from a minority group in Bauchi State. Will he be able to mobilize the votes? Because it's not enough to be on the joint ticket. You must also have electoral value. You must be electable. You must bring, value to the table. So that's about him. The name of Boss Mustafa has also been mentioned. Boss Mustafa is a Christian from Adamawa State. Okay, does he have as much influence or impact in Adamawa, where the Christians are a minority, and where Vice President Atiku Abubakar Accident was, comes from? So those are the Christians on the APC side. And it is for this reason, because it looks like the Christians within the party, extracted from the mainstream, that they are very weak. So the Tinubu camp, people have been saying there is the possibility of a Muslim ticket. And that has been reduced to quite a number of persons. The key argument, before we look at the personalities involved, is that can Nigeria afford a Muslim ticket? Those who are, in support of it say it doesn't quite matter, that it will not damage the Tinubu ticket in any way. Because in any case, if he picks the right person who can mobilize the votes, it may not matter. After all, it worked in 1993, the Abiola Kingibe ticket. But the question we can raise in that regard is that it's 1993-2023 in Nigeria. Okay, so there are others. The governor of Kebbi State, Bagudu, Atiku Bagudu, who has a good relationship with Tinubu. But what we see, what we have heard, is that whatever it takes, Tinubu is likely to pick from the northeast. The departing president is from the northwest, so it will not make sense to pick a running mate from the northwest. So if he picks from the northeast, will he be a Christian? Will he be a Muslim? Will he be Bagudu? Will he be Zulum, who has said, well, he's happy being the governor of Borno State, and he does not want to leave that position? Who else will he be from that zone? I think what we've been told is that by Wednesday, we'll have some clarity on it, because it's an announcement that has to be made. And after that, we can then begin to talk about the politics of exclusion versus inclusion, and the politics of religion, with the Christian Association of Nigeria saying that the APC should not try a Muslim ticket, with the Save Nigeria group saying that a Muslim ticket will not make sense.
In picking a VP, many things come into play. At first, in all of our analysis, let's not forget that the VP is as good as a president in waiting. If Saturis doesn't become paribus, if all things don't become equal. But we expect Saturis to be always paribus, all things being equal, and the president should go on and leave his terms. But we have seen that had not happened in Nigeria in the case of Umar Musa Yar'Adua, sadly enough. But the VP candidate, despite the fact that there are not enough constitutional roles for the vice president, it also should be a strong candidate. Because when you look at the antecedents everywhere in the world, it's somebody that can get the votes out. And I'll give you the time of Goodluck Jonathan, that he picked Namadi Sambo. And Namadi Sambo delivered, because a big fallout of the votes that would have come out of Kaduna against Goodluck Jonathan was stalled by Namadi Sambo's work in Kaduna. And that was why, for the very first time in a long time, the PDP split that vote bank out of Kaduna. And the margin wasn't too far off that the CPC used to beat the PDP in Kaduna in the 2011 elections. So quick, straight off the bat, you see the role of the vice president, the balancing on the ticket. And that's why a lot of people say religion too matters a great deal. The first way the APC will shoot themselves in the foot is if they pick a Muslim ticket. There needs to be balance. How they are going to dig it and look for that Christian candidate to balance it, it behoves on them. The PDP straight off the bat is kind of easy for them, to pick a certain candidate, but who will they pick? Would it be a Wike that has a big war chest, but like you said, compatibility is a big problem? Do you think Wike is a very highly ambitious person himself? So Wike is probably going to give it a try again in 2027. So do you think they'll be able to balance the ticket out with Atiku Abubakar? I very much doubt it. So I'm sure they will look for other people across board. But you need a very good war chest. I also need a solid candidate as vice president. I think the poster child for all of this, in terms of picking a vice presidential candidate, should take me back to the 60s in America when Kennedy was running. And a lot of people said Kennedy was immature, lacked experience and the likes, and he had to pick a Lyndon Johnson that was a Texan politician warhouse to balance out the ticket. So the vice presidential role is also one that balances the ticket, and I think they should make the right decisions as they come up to submit their running mates. We'll go for the next story. The June 12th Democracy Day movement of Nigeria on Sunday marked the 29th anniversary of June 12th presidential election won by late billionaire businessman Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola. Speakers at the event looked back at the election, still adjudged to be the freest and fairest in the history of Nigeria, and concluded that Nigeria must get its democracy right as the way to properly honor those who sacrificed in many ways because of the historic election. Arise News correspondent Tokunbo Yetunji has the details.
For 29 years, the historic June 12, 1993 presidential election has been a talking point in reference to Nigeria's democratic journey. Free, fair, and produced a popular pan-Nigerian mandate for billionaire businessman Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola. But he never lived to enjoy the mandate, as the same military junta that organized the election annulled the exercise for some incoherent reasons. Like MKO Abiola, several other Nigerians, including his most senior wife at the time, Kudirat, paid the supreme price in the struggle to actualize the mandates. Gone with the mandate were the opportunities that the watershed election presented for Nigeria, a country still in search of nationhood. But the discussions around the event and what could have been at the mandate stood never stop. The annual ritual at the home of the late Abiola in Ikeja, Lagos is held on Sunday, with pro-June 12 democracy activists gathering alongside members of the late Abiola's family. Again, it is a story of deep reflection on the processes of the election, with specific focus on the roles of different actors.
June 12 is a story of personal sacrifice. It's a story of collective struggle, and it's a national symbol. It is a personal sacrifice because that event in process and its outcome has cost people life and blood. It has altered people's life.
The day is now officially Nigeria's Democracy Day in recognition of its importance in the country's history, and guests here are happy about that. But the worry for majority of them is that the process of recruiting political leaders appears more corrupted almost 3 decades after June 12 presented a bright democratic light for Africa's most populous nation.
Nigeria must get it right in remembrance of Chief MKO Abiola. We must go back to that pre-January 15, 1966 era, when we practiced true fiscal federalism.
But the big question that continues to haunt us is that the people have begun to feel weary about this, their democracy. And so whatever it takes for us to return this country to democracy from this pseudo-democracy of now must be done.
bring it here.
An unusual guest, Mr. Peter Obi, who is seeking to lead Nigeria in next year's election, joins the event midway, just when a comparison between the June 12 election and the current process is being discussed. And this is how he intervenes.
And using this occasion to call all of us who are still practitioners in politics of Nigeria to recommit ourselves to building the ideals which our great father stood for and died for. And finally, to all of us, I've been to so many churches today, and I've always asked them, being a Sunday, please continue to pray for Nigeria. Continue to pray for Nigeria. And let your prayer points be, may God touch the hearts of all of us, including myself, who are politicians, to use public money for public good.
I believe if there is the last legacy, the most important one that remains for the president to do, is to conduct a free, fair, and credible election and hand over political power. It should not be like the APC primaries, where there was an attempt to impose a candidate.
29 years after, God has preserved many of you who fought so valiantly, so sacrificially, and many of you are here today to pay tribute to that struggle, not just to my father, but also to yourselves, for your valor, for the fact that you stood up to tyranny, for the fact that you risked imprisonment, exile, and death.
What I'm actually even more disappointed about is that the potential gain and progress we could have made if that election was allowed to happen. But notwithstanding, we are in a democracy now. It is not perfect, but it's what we have. What we need to do now is to participate.
As the event winds down, guests are reminded that one big positive of the June 12, 1993 election is a proof that against all odds, Nigerians can do the right thing, and the right thing Nigerians must do, beginning with the 2023 elections, when it will have been 30 years, when the people forgot every other sentiment to vote the candidate that they believed could get the job done. Tokunbo Oyetunji, Arise News, Lagos.
Wow. So much to say.
I mean, I'll leave it to you two, I guess.
Well, June 12, 1993, I was just remarking off camera how on that particular occasion I trekked from Alakuko to Ogba, although for a different reason. But, you know, it was a day when Nigerians united and all the divisive factors that had always assailed the country, all those centrifugal forces, you know, were pushed to the back. And we saw Nigerians voting for quality, voting for progress, voting for change. The slogan then by Basharu MKO Abiola on the platform of the SDP and his running mate Babagana Kingibe was hope. Hope 93. And Nigerians were at a point where they had been battered, bruised, brutalized by decades of military rule, and they wanted progress. So it didn't matter to Nigerians that it was a Muslim ticket. The SDP ticket, led by Basharu MKO Abiola, promised hope. Hope in terms of wealth creation, hope in terms of opportunities, hope in terms of the advancement of Nigeria, hope in terms of putting Nigeria on the map. And the people voted overwhelmingly for the MKO Abiola ticket. Even his opponent, Bashir Tofa, lost in Kano, in his own ward, in the entire state. Because it didn't matter then. Nigerians just wanted the country to move forward. But then, the military junta, even General Babangida, who was the leader of the junta at the time, I said, well, it was under pressure. It wasn't a personal decision. On June 24, that election was annulled. The counting of the results, the announcement of the results was prevented. It was years later that we will discover that a great injustice had been done. And that led to a great turmoil in Nigeria. What will have been the second liberation for Nigerians? The first liberation was liberation from the shackles of colonialism. The second liberation that will have happened in 1993, which will be the liberation from atrocious, and obnoxious military rule, did not happen because some people decided to subvert the will of the people. And Nigeria went into a crisis for complete 6 years. And it was again the symbol of June 12, Bashorun M.K. Abiola, who led that struggle. Many will remember the Ekpetedo Declaration, where, he courageously stood on his mandate. Many people have tried to reduce the June 12 phenomenon. I've written, so many essays on this. They've tried to reduce it to a Yoruba affair. But it was not a Yoruba affair. There were heroes from the north, from the east. You had Ndubuisi Kanu, you had Dan Suleiman from the north. You have journalists, you had the whole of civil society saying that never again in this country will anybody subvert the people's will. And it's good that this year, June 12, we are all being reminded of it. Today is a public holiday marking June 12. I hope parents who remember the history will teach their children that there was once upon a time in Nigeria when the people of Nigeria stood up and defended democracy, and they were subsequently led by a man called Bashorun M.K. Abiola and others who said, look, the people's will must reign supreme. And those values represented by June 12, that historic moment that we now see will never be forgotten or displaced, because memory is important in the construction of the movement of a country. We hope that it will guide us as we go to the polls in 2023. Already some people are saying, get your PVC. And we hope that in 2023, that PVC, people will vote wisely and they will be allowed to do so, because progress, hope, these are two major things that Nigerians need, that 1993, June 12 represented, and which we must reinvent to save Nigeria.
One thing that has to be said, I'll just say something. I wanted to say a lot, but there's no time. The fact that the will of the people was subverted by some people in 1993. Those same people were Nigerians, that they didn't want the collective will of Nigerians to be heard. But the shocking thing is, those people still live till date in our national lives. That's all on news headlines. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll have Rotus, we'll have Michael to give us updates on Africa global business. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Our dependable Rotus Adiri is here to give us an African business update. Morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Rufai. Doctor, welcome back. Great job in Abuja. Tireless work there. We begin with Goldman Sachs predicting that we're going to see $140 per barrel oil. The usual supply issues, geopolitical concerns. But there's a discussion here about what the rising oil prices and the rising dollar mean for emerging markets, especially where we are. Here's a tweet from a guy I follow. Alessandro is an Italian. He's a macroeconomics follower here. He says, and I actually have to bleep this out. It says emerging markets, he says dollar index versus rate hikes. Emerging markets have never been so, and he uses an expletive. So the two, let's zoom in on this chart here. If you look at what this chart is saying here, it's saying U.S. rate hikes and expectations. So basically, as the Fed continues to raise interest rates, it makes the dollar stronger because there's more attraction to U.S. dollar securities. But what does that mean for emerging markets? Because you're dealing with higher oil prices, you're also dealing with a stronger dollar. That now means that, as far as import-dependent nations, imported inflation is coming in, and so your own currency is weakening. Here's a quote from Alexander Tomic. I think he's an associate dean at Boston College. He says, high oil prices are a double whammy for everyone outside the U.S. Other countries have to pay even more for barrels of crude because they're dealing with the rising dollar and rising oil prices. The U.S. is dealing with just the rising prices. So, if you look at currencies, I think the yen now is at what, a 20-year low. The naira, the CD, everybody else. It's just a real tough double whammy for everyone. Speaking of double whammies, the grid collapsed again. This is the This is the 5th time this year that the grid has collapsed. What does this mean? People have to turn to alternative sources of power. You see where diesel is right now, especially for companies. You've seen the margins, what overhead costs mean for individuals, and this is just, I mean, here we are. Again, this is yet another issue that our candidates running for president must address and tell us how they'll fix it. Check this out. So these are a couple of analysts. They've been on the Global Business Report several times. Olumide Adesina, he says the national grid is tired as it collapses for the 5th time this year. Ayodeji Ebo is another analyst. He says collapsing like the crypto market. Have you seen the crypto prices lately?
Yeah.
The Bitcoin is down like 7% so far. This just today. It's really pretty bad. Muda Yusuf, the CEO of the Center for Promotion Center for Private Promotion, the CPPE, he is essentially saying that he put out a statement here talking about the impact of electioneering on the economy. Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise. So he says electioneering poses a risk. It distracts from governance, economic management, as it distracts our folks who are in leadership from governance and economic management. It says heated rhetoric stokes violence, which deters investment. Election spending has inflation implications as well as FX implications as well.
See what I was saying?
Yep. Yes,
now you
correct.
believe me?
Indeed. Corruption, the risk of state resources being used for elections, uncertainty for investors, economic reform initiatives being stalled. And in Abidjan, the Africa CEO Forum is taking place today and tomorrow. Vice President Osibanjo has touched down in Abidjan. There he is. This video was posted a few hours earlier. He's being greeted by the Prime Minister of Côte d'Ivoire. And, yes, and there's going to be so much that's going to be discussed. They are packing. I mean, think of every single topic every topical issue on the African continent. Power, climate change, digital economy, women in leadership, everything is going to be discussed. Lagos Governor Sanwo-Olu is going to be there as well. Alhaji Rabiu, head of BOA, he's going to be there. I mean, it's just, I think former President Olusegun Obasanjo is going to be there. It's tight. We're there. Boston Omofaye is there, so hopefully we'll be having a chat with him from there as well.
I mean, so Rotus, obviously you see the effect of the argument we're having the other time about, the fact that, election spending does boost the economy, but it's crimped up because of the inflationary pressures that will come out as a result of it, and it really causes a lull in the end. So what you think is expected? And also, I will want to argue further, and I will depend on the data when it comes out, that the sectoral boost is not as massive as a lot of people see it, because the money is really stratified. It's only a group of people that get it, but it's out of something we can still argue and debate. But it goes further to show, what's it called, the next story.
Power?
Oil?
Power. Yeah, okay.
It goes further to show the fact that the problem with our power system, apart from production, is greed. So when all these presidential candidates now put out a word and say they will provide 12,000 megawatts, I say...
Or 15.
Or 15,000. I say, quit the chase. Stop lying to yourself. The problem is not really incumbent on the megawatt, it's incumbent on the grid. And that grid, you can't turn it around in the next 6 years. So anybody that wants to work on power, empirically, you need about 2 terms to work on power, to work on this grid.
That's gonna work. It's not going to work well if you're running for elections.
I mean, when you see the Siemens deal, you see the timeline for you, because those projects are in phases. So all the grids spread across 774 local governments and the substations and 33,000 kVA lines and things like that, you can't just turn up this grid and say, okay, in 4 years I'll produce 4,000 megawatts, 12,000 megawatts, and load it on what grid? So please, when they are right now their manifesto, because some have said their manifesto comes out in September, when they're right now their manifesto, they should not tell us that 12,000 megawatts in 4 years. It's not possible. Let's not deceive ourselves.
With the national grid, the thing to do, as stakeholders have consistently argued, is to decentralize the grid.
Yes.
That's the solution. And that's what the presidential candidates should be thinking of.
Yes.
Because you can't have a country of 200 million people depending on just one grid. So it's over-centralized.
Yes.
And I think it's a big scandal that a country of over 200 million people, at the best of times, can only have access to not more than 3,000 megawatts. Now, when this central grid collapses, then, of course, all of us are in disarray. That is that about that. Second, you talked about the prediction that oil may rise as much as Goldman Sachs, saying $140 per barrel. Well, there's another report that says that companies that run refineries are cashing out big time. You know, one commentator says refineries owners, it's like they are minting money at this time because the world faces an energy crisis. And then, of course, you know, here in Nigeria, all our refineries are moribund. As you have with the electricity sector, you have the same crisis with refineries. This is an opportunity, you know, for Nigeria to make progress, to make money, with a lot of opportunities from the crisis, given the advantages that we have. But if it is electricity, we'll complain about gas, we'll complain about water supply, we will say there is pipeline vandalism. With refineries, we will also give excuses. No, Nigerians do not want excuses going forward. That, I think, is you know, the two major issues in my view. As for what's the name of our friend, Muda Yusuf?
Yes.
Of course, he's right on all the points. What he did not add is that foreign investors are holding up because they want to see the scale of the political risk in Nigeria. And really, there's that risk.
Indeed.
Well, as it is with our grid, it is with our governance, everything is over-centralized around here, and nothing really
works.
Yeah. I didn't want to say it. I thought it, but I was like, I hesitated.
It is what it is.
Oh dear. Thank you so much, Rosa.
Thank you.